I'm Margery, and I feel like my panel's an Agatha Christie novel called 10 Little Indians, because there were going to be 4 of us. One person came up with a conflict. Andrew Matoran is sick, and we're really hoping that Abhishek Mishra will get here, because he's got such an interesting story to tell. And my good old friend Christian Aparicio is here, is always here. Thank you so much. So anyway, it's really too bad Andrew can't be here, because he was going to talk to us about Houghton Mifflin, which is the biggest K-12 publisher in the United States, and their recent acquisition of NWEA, which is a very large testing company. But since he's not here, we're just going to go ahead and talk to you. You're the star. When Adam asked me to do this, he said that the session was going to be called Magic Mix, and I was like, oh my God, is that a term of art? Is that a new business term that I don't know? So I Googled it, and what I came up with was mixtures of magic mushrooms. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the power of mergers and acquisitions to accelerate your company. Unfortunately, our one panelist doesn't do a lot of mergers and acquisitions in his primary business, where he's CEO of Innova Schools. But still, we're going to go at it. It's exciting to think about the power of M&A. Yesterday, when we were prepping for the meeting, we were talking about the old belief that 70 to 90% of mergers and acquisitions don't really work. And I've been the acquiree of companies, and I've been acquired. Being the acquiree is so much better than being acquired. It's remarkable. Because all of a sudden you're in this new place and you have to be part of that culture and get along. And anyway, actually that didn't work very well at all. But instead of being 70 to 90% failure rate, it seems to have reversed, and now there seems to be more like a 70 to 90% success rate, because people have just gotten a lot smarter about how to handle mergers and acquisitions. And I think they've been smarter about what they're looking for in a successful merger and acquisition. If Abhishek does show up, we're going to hear a really interesting story from him about his work in India, and I hope he's going to tell this story about the boy and the goat. But I'm going to start with you to talk about your experience, and I hope you will tell the story about the woman who sells juice on the street. So we have like 2 kind of folk tales that we hope we're going to get to. And Christian, can you tell us a little bit about Innova Schools, but also about your role with Nexus?
For sure. For sure. So thank you very much for showing up. I'm very happy to be here, and thanks, Margery, for the invitation, and GSV as well. I'm Peruvian, but I live in Mexico for the past 7 years. My career has been around M&A, investing, and private equity. I have dual role at Intercorp. I'm a director at the private equity business, which is a $1.5 billion asset under management private equity business. But I'm also the CEO of Innova Schools in Mexico, right? Innova Schools is a K-12 network of private schools that is trying to democratize top quality education for the low to middle income classes in Latin America. We operate in Peru, Mexico, Colombia, and this year we're opening in Ecuador. We have around 80 campuses and around almost 80,000 students so far, and growing. And Intercorp is a $11 billion revenue conglomerate that has investments in financial services, retail, education, and healthcare, right? And the education platform of Intercorp, it's around 350,000 students. Okay, so Innova Schools, oh, hi Abhishek. So Innova Schools is
He's alive.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome. So Innova Schools tries to break the cost-quality barrier of education. We're trying through scale to create top-quality education affordable for the middle class. And we have very good learning outcomes, but we like our students to talk by themselves, right? So one of the stories that Margery is talking about is, although we have several kids from Peru or Latin America that came from the middle class that are in top schools in the US, such as the University of Chicago, Dartmouth, we love to talk about Leslie Espinosa, whose family came from a very humble origins, and now she's studying, she has a full scholarship in Stanford studying neuroscience. So that's the reason why Innova schools exist. We really want to change the world through education. Thanks.
Can you just talk a little bit about the curriculum at Innova schools? And you told me yesterday that you've studied some of the better schools in the United States, including KIPP schools, and a little bit about the role of English in your schools.
For sure. So so we partnered with probably one of the best institutions in the US. For example, we partnered with IDEO to design what the top education would have been in Latin America with the restraints and constraints that we have there. We partnered with the research center of the Berkeley University, right? And we developed our early childhood program with them. And we try to build this in our students, the key competences, the skills that they're gonna need for the future, right? We don't actually care much about subjects. We use it as an excuse to develop the real competence that they required. And we're particularly obsessed with English because we believe that's one of the things that is gonna travel across their life, together with critical thinking, problem solving, and innovation and design thinking.
Thank you. Naughty.
Sorry,
It's
everyone.
okay. I'm so glad you got here.
I just
because,
ran down the corridor.
Yeah.
I was the only sprinter across.
No, we're happy to have you. So, Abhishek, I said that if you made it here, in addition to introducing people to your company, you were going to make sure and tell the story of the boy with the goat. So, and you're the Chief Strategy Officer, right, at Physics Wallah in India. So can you please talk a little bit about your company, your role, how disruptive it's been?
So I lead strategy, and strategy involves anything that comes in the form of crisis. So my role has never been defined in the form of a KRA, but have been through product, program, because have been part of the founding team. So I started when the company was only 30 members. Today it's 15,000. So have been fortunate to see through the entire journey, but take care of funding, starting new initiatives, expansion, investor relations. That's the role. But essentially, why I committed to this organization, what drives is, so PW is India's largest, fastest growing, profitable edtech startup. We started only 3.5 years back. But this is not what defines us. What defines us is we are highly mission board. And the mission is that, in India, education has two parallel streams. One is the formal stream of education with schools and colleges. And the second is the stream of education where students prepare for competitive examinations. So you want to get into the IITs, which is the premium tier colleges of the country, you have to give the world's second toughest competitive examination. That's the threshold, that's the gate you have to cross. So we prepare students for these competitive examinations. So we have 34 examinations that we cover. We started with only STEM. STEM examinations that help students go into undergrad schools. Today we cover STEM, non-STEM, exams that help students go into government, civil services jobs, exams that get students chartered accountant certifications, which is equivalent to a CFA certification in the US. So that's where we lie. Competitive test prep is the domain where the company currently functions. And the differentiation that we have brought in is that in India, 147 million students prepare for any form of competitive examination starting from age 14, right up to they are 32 years of old. So across that spectrum, only 5% of the students were able to get formal coaching, because, to prepare for these competitive examinations is to aim towards a common syllabus. That's different from the syllabus you are taught in schools and colleges. It's highly competitive. In one examination, you have 2 million kids applying, filling the registration forms, and there are only 10,000 seats to be filled out of it. Wow. So that's the level of competition, and the score is the only objective criteria, the sole objective criteria to decide whether you get into it or you get out of that race. So that becomes high stake, high intensity, and the life actually changes. I myself have given that examination, been through. It changes and takes you to the next level of prosperity, not only you, but your entire family. So that's the context and the importance of these examinations. And then only 5% were having access to formal coaching, formal training for these examinations. We decided that we want to build an offering for the masses, for the bottom of the pyramid. And what we actually did was everyone was doing these Excel calculations of TAM, but actually it was not obtainable because they were only focusing on the top 5%. And any preparation alternative that was incumbent when we started, it was at a $1,500 price point for the full year of preparation. We launched it at $50. So we brought $1,500 to $50. And when you change that $1,500 to $50, you are able to include a lot of students who never aspired or never imagined to come into this stream of preparation. You introduce them to dream big. So that's the mission on which we are working. So it's the ultra-disruptive pricing strategy that brings the volume of students. And because of the volume of students, we are able to price it extremely low. And we are high on academic outcomes because we teach the masses and we have the highest number of selections in these examinations as well. So every 5th engineer in India is a student who has studied from a PW course. Every 6th doctor of the country is a student who has studied from a PW course. Every 5th civil servant is a student who has been through any form of PW guidance programs. So that's the kind of penetration and presence that we have in the country. That's about the country.
Okay, just to make this really real, so it was $1,500 was the market. Yeah. You came in at $50, plus you're in many, many languages that spread the...
Eight vernacular languages.
Yeah, and tell the story about the boy and the goat, because it's just so good.
So you realize when you bring a $50 course, what happens is people have said that it's a $1,500 course is offline, it's a 1 to 100 classroom, you engage. How do you bring that engagement? We have the globe's biggest online classrooms. We have live students, 50,000 students concurrently studying in one single live classroom. That's the average. We have one of the classes having 200K students in a single live classroom. So that's the maximum of the volumes. And people asked, where does the interaction go? Where does the personalization come from? I said, it's not a question of what you want to eat. It's a question of whether you get to eat or not to eat. So that's a deciding factor of how we build. And one of the stories in that context is, I was telling Margery the other day, that we have a student who sold his goat. It was his pet for the last 7 years. And he sold it for $60. He kept $48 for the course, $12 for the full year of internet. Borrowed a device from his friend's family, and most primitive devices, so that's a tech challenge that we solve. And then, you have a limit to the internet that you use on a single particular day. You only get to use 1.5 GB of data. Whenever he felt that his data was not sufficient, he went to a nearby Xerox shop, a stationery shop, borrowed Wi-Fi from that shop, downloaded our lectures, came back to his home to study, and he today is admitted into the 2nd best engineering college of the country. He gets into IIT Delhi. So that's the kind of stories, that's only one. We have thousands and millions of stories that we actually drive. Many get selected, So there's one more story that I'll just take 30 seconds to explain. There was a student who actually got into the best engineering college of the country, IIT Bombay, but then after the examination, he skipped the counseling because he had no clue how to pay the fee for the tuition fee for the college. Because his parents never had a bank account, they never had a CIBIL score, they never had a PAN card. So they were totally financially excluded from the system. So he had no clue how to do it. And when he skipped the first round of counseling, we actually wrote a letter to the institution saying that he should be admitted, and we paid for the fees. So we run a PW Foundation today for all those causes to fund students who actually get selected. So first we were happy that we were able to allow students to dream, but then we thought whether we are creating more problems in the lives of these students, because these students are not only, they don't only need money to fund that tuition fee in the college, but they are also sometimes supporting the livelihood of the family. So once the student goes to study, how will the income of the family come? So these are the pieces that actually come up in the life we interact with students. These are the problems that they share with us post getting selected. But yes, this is the target group where we actually operate.
So you guys are both very mission-driven. You're both disrupting traditional delivery systems for education. I'd like you to talk about how mergers and acquisitions plays a part in what you're doing or does not play a part in what you're doing. So I'm going to start with you, Christian.
Okay, thank you. So although Intercorp's growth has been fueled by a lot of M&A transactions, and also in my past life I've done a lot of them, currently at Innova schools, the amount of M&A in our exponential growth has a little bit in the mix, has a little bit, just a little bit of M&A. We've only done, I would say, 7% of all our growth has come from M&A. And it's not because we don't like them or we don't understand the benefits of M&A transactions. We do understand, we do love them. I would say probably 40 to 30% of all the growth at Intercorp, either new platforms or add-ons, have come from M&A transactions. It's a result of the combination of our strategy, hyper-focus on growing in private schools, and also our strategy on leveraging scale through standardization and the characteristics of the market. We are targeting the low to middle income families in Latin America, so our competition or the potential targets are usually small schools between 300 to 500 students, and they're usually very traditional and somewhat informal, right? So when you compare the potential benefits of an M&A transaction for our business and our strategy, most of them kind of rule out and some of them get reduced because of the size, right? Since we leverage scale through standardization, basically we are a single branded network of schools. So new brands actually don't give us additional value for us. Since we are hyper-focused on building schools or growing through that service at Innova schools, and we are not looking for different vectors, we are not getting any new value from getting integrations, vertical integrations, right? And then the other things that may hold, right, in terms of benefits from M&A, gets reduced because of the size of the transactions. And when you compare those reduced benefits of the potential targets with the cost of M&A transactions, and I'm not talking about due diligence cost or the fees to the bankers, which are completely variable. I'm talking about integration costs and frictions, which means focus and time, right? Those are mainly fixed costs. They are agnostic to the size, right? It turns out that most of the time, the benefits and the costs do not match, right? Usually, the benefits do not compensate for the costs of the transaction cost, and you have to adjust for price, and then you don't get that competitive in the bidding process, right? I think it would be a different case if probably we had a multi-brand approach, for example, which I don't see that happen in the future. But maybe if we start thinking about other vectors, right, within the K-12 space, they're just K-12 private schools. And probably if we start seeing larger targets, right? We're always looking for that, right? Across Latin America, there are some small changes that maybe make sense for us. And what I'm sure it's going to happen right now that construction costs are going higher, we're starting to look at M&A opportunities basically as a real estate acquisition, right? And that's getting more sense for us.
Thanks. What about, can you talk about acquisition and how it's played a role in your business?
So, although I agree to some extent to what Christian said, but at the same point in time, I have had a very opposite experience with M&As. So a quarter of the students that we have on our paid platform comes from our M&A partners. We like to call them partners because we feel that's more respectful. And then almost 22% of our revenue growth that has come this year has come because of the mergers acquisitions that we have done. So for us, it has been a very positive thesis, but we have a charter created internally. When we started out, I had never done an M&A in my entire life. So I learned most of the skill sets of doing it while I was there with PW. And rule number one, we don't use a banker, ever. Because we don't want any filtered information. So that's what we do. But although we have onboarded them as advisors, they advise us on how to structure the transaction, but not to interact. We don't want to filter in the way of interaction. Rule number two is we don't do an M&A because we want a balance sheet to be consolidated. It's not that is not a thesis that we work on. What we essentially do is that if we can build, that's the first preference. We'll build it. If we can't build anything, we'll pay a premium for it and buy. But then it even makes sense because we have now hung up our boots and we know that we are not able to build the business. So all the M&As that we've done, we have natively realized that we could have never gone into those target markets. We would have never gone into those geographies, into those exam categories that we aspire to. And now I'll talk about more substantive examples. So the biggest category for us beyond undergrad, engineering, and medical, because in India, every parent wants his or her child to go and become an engineer or become a doctor. So that's the most coveted and the biggest target group for our business. But beyond that, the biggest TAM is that of students preparing to go into civil services examination. The Indian Administrative Services is the most coveted job out there in the public administrative roles. So you only have 200 Indian Administrative Services officers selected every year out of 1.5 million kids that fill out the forms. So that's insanely, that's the world's toughest examination. So we have population, so we have the level of difficulty is going high. So for that examination, you need to prepare for 19 subjects, although the syllabus is anywhere from Earth score to Sun score. Anything can be asked, but still you have to study through 19 subjects: sociology, science, political science, international relations. So you have to study Constitution of India. So there are 19 subjects. We could not have built the content for 19 subjects overnight. We never had a legacy of doing it. We were STEM. So what we essentially did was we went into the biggest offline hotspot of that market. We looked for whose booklets sell the most with the students, which are the most popular content out there with the students. We picked all those booklets, hired an advisory to read through all those booklets and say which content actually made sense, which was innovative, more representative of the new styles of pedagogy, and then realized that a few of them were out of our reach because they were beyond our budget that we had allocated to do the M&A. And the third best player was well within our reach. We targeted the player, and then we pursued it like anything, and there was a competitive bid. We spent 2 months just talking to the founder and his team, And so it supercharged our category. The day, we onboarded the team, it was a small team of 15 members, but they had all the content. They had been doing it for the last 5 years. They had a YouTube channel. We are also a community-driven engine. We have 44 million YouTube subscribers. We have 4 million paid users. So that's the community that powers our paid courses. So they have a YouTube channel. So we thought the DNA is very similar. And we got them on board, and within 5 days of launching the course, we had 40,000 enrollments. Within 5 days. We could have never had that traction had we tried to do it organically. So the thesis was, that was one of the theses, you supercharge any category that you launch. Thesis number 2, we teach students to go into aspirational categories. They want to become the best engineers, the best doctors, they want to have the best jobs. But competitive examinations in India are also given by students who want to go into, they want to get a government job. And government job can have layers, that can tiers. You have a tier A job, you have a tier C job. Now, our student organically would never aspire from a tier A job to appear for a tier C job. But we as a brand wanted to cover the entire test prep landscape of the country. So we wanted to be holistic. Does that target group forms as a necessary forward or backward integration to where we exist? No. Do we want to do it ourselves? No, because there is a different essence of the brand that you want to maintain. So we want to do it from a separate brand, but we still want to have, as a group, we want to cover the entire landscape of test prep, open a new TAM. So we partnered with a 22-year, more than a 2-decade-old player, which was at a $20 million scale. And they were profitable. They have never seen losses in their life. They have never been funded. So they had strong basics of frugality. So again, a DNA match, we onboard them. That's thesis number 2. And the third thesis is, we are a Hindi heartland brand. So primarily in India, out of 28 states, 15 odd states have Hindi as the primary language of interaction. But then in the southern states, every state is as different as going to a different country. So if I go to the state of Kerala, it is equivalent to going to the country of South Korea, because the language is so different, the culture is so different, that even I witnessed the culture for the first time. I had visited Kerala for the first time. So when I landed in that geography, I realized that, and we had a 2% market share there, 2%. We have a 25% market share in the north. So we thought, there's no way we can get from 2% to 25%. We found out the best player out there in Kerala, and post the deal, we have a 85% market share today. We started with the 60% market share when we acquired. We acquired the business at $10 million of revenue. It's doing $30 million last year. It will do $55 million next year. It's the fastest growing asset. It's growing faster than the core company. So we are happy that we did these acquisitions. And the thesis is clear. Either you supercharge, or you build a new TAM, or you go to a new geography.
Right. So have either of you had an acquisition that did not work? I witnessed an acquisition that was just a total bungle. It wasn't a lot of money, but still, a company that I know acquired a team of engineers that had some existing code. This company thought that the code could supercharge them into a market like you described. And a month later, after the acquisition was done, they discovered that the code was pretty much useless, and all the better engineers had quit already because they got a payout and they went, which I think represents two of the big problems in acquisitions that don't work, which is due diligence. Is I think you get the idea, you sort of fall in love, and you see what you want to see, right? So due diligence isn't always great. And then also just the cultural disconnect when somebody lands in a company. So your description of what you've done is all about you going out and finding the candidates that you thought would be best, and you've done some courting of those candidates. Christian, I know in your job as a private equity, you made acquisitions. Do you wait for people to come to you, or do you go? No, you go and look for things. Can you
Sure.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we had a very basic approach to targeting. We look at the market trends that we want to follow, then we look at what are the opportunities, and then we look at the targets, and then we start reaching out. Basically, we usually have a very strong network in Latin America, so we try not to use brokers for that. We try to connect directly, and there's always a way to reach out to one of the target firms, because we're usually targeting deals around $50 million, probably to $500 million. And those targets are easy to reach out to. So yeah, sometimes they come to us, but usually we have a very proactive.
So Abhishek, in the companies that you described that you acquired, were there other people bidding for those companies, or were you able to go and make a deal without interference from competitors?
So somehow all deals that we did had a competitive bid always present, and to the extent that we started believing that the CCTV camera that was fitted in our offices actually related to our competitors. We started believing that, and no matter how discreet we wanted to keep the process, but we always had a last moment surprise in the deal. But what we realized is, and I'll tell this with an anecdote. After spending a month with one of the founders, he was coming to the office to sign the term sheet. And while the dev docs were due to be signed in a month, but we had decided we'll start working because there was no way we were looking back on the deal. We were so sure about it. But while he was traveling to the office, he got a call from the competitor saying that, I don't know what the deal is. I'll pay you 1.5 times what the deal amount is. I'll double the amount of cash that you have in the cash stock mix. You just stop where you are. We have our vice presidents traveling to you, and they'll just take you and pick you to that office. He was somehow getting abducted. And to our surprise, we could not connect with him. And he was actually running late. So we actually thought that there's something getting through. And I was particularly nervous. I thought, I am at the verge of getting fired. But at the same point in time, he came down to the office, and he didn't mention about this throughout the conversation. We had a hearty 3 hours conversation before we took the pens in hand and we signed it off. Post-signing, he said that a trivia, he mentioned the trivia word is important. He said the trivia is that while I was coming down, there were at least 20 people chasing me, and few people reached out, his families also, to persuade him that there'll be a more glorious deal for him and his life will be settled, to join hands with the competitor. But he did join hands with us, because there we feel is the role of the connect that you play. And that is how the people connect is epitome. It's right at the top. And that is how what we have learned from GSV. You know what? When GSV wrote the first check to us, it was a maiden round for us. It was $1 billion pre-money. So it was big valuation, but they wrote the check on 4 lines of Excel numbers that we shared. We were 18 months into inception. We didn't have the best data, maintenance systems. We just didn't have the best records. But they actually took a bet on the people. They interacted with us. They flew down to our offices. They spoke at length. So this is what we learned from them. That just identify that what is the interest, and if the goals are aligned, if both the founders want to build, we want all our founders to do big in life, everyone to make wealth, make money, grow, and feel satisfied that they have, rise up the Maslow's hierarchy. But at the same point in time, they should not have a checkout mindset. This is what we realized. And when we structure deals, we are very, so the first indicators of whether the deal is going to work or not, no matter how good the business is, that the rule is that we don't want to run the businesses that we acquire. We want the founders to stay and build it for us and institutionalize them over half a decade. So they should at least have a commitment for half a decade. And that commitment comes when you structure the deal and you see the reaction of the people there. How much are they committed to the upsides of the deal? how much are they able to ride the risk with you. So when the mindsets are aligned, no matter what the deal is from the competitive bid, we have always won.
Oh, I think, we're talking about business, but it is about people, isn't it? And I'm on the board of Cambion, and Cambion is a fantastic basket of very effective products. And it really started with founders who were acquired and have done really well, and some of them are still there. So anyway, we have about 5 minutes. Does anybody have a question they want to ask, or do they want to talk about their own experience with M&A?
Guys, this is the only non-AI session. You can ask any question that is not AI.
Yeah, thank you. Mike's coming.
Hey, Abhishek, nice to meet you. Just a question regarding the strategic and financial value of acquiring YouTube channels and how you think about that. What are the kind of risks and benefits you see there?
See, we primarily are a company that builds YouTube. We started with one YouTube channel 3.5 years back with 2 million subscribers. We have 84 YouTube channels today with 44 million subscribers. So we know how to build YouTube. Although we have one acquisition that we now strike off the list, it was the smallest one that we ever did. It was less than $500,000 in stocks plus cash taken together. It was actually a YouTube channel that we acquired. So I have a discrete learning from it that channels you can't acquire because the channel is so hinged to the personality of the creator that if the creator goes, the channel is bullshit for you. You can't do anything of it. So you need to have the creator on board, not the channel. That's our understanding. The second is that once you get a channel on board, what happened is we were also building a channel similar to the target group that was affiliated to the channel that we were acquiring in-house. So what happened is there was a competition between the in-house team and the team that we onboarded. And somehow the in-house team had the greater access to resources, the greater access to facilities, and the in-house team gradually ended up winning the race of building the channel. So when you acquire the channel, you should actually feel that you put all your eggs into that channel. Otherwise, the channel does not grow. That's our learning. But more or less, it's an organic play. I would not generalize the statement, but for us, what has happened is we have never till now encountered a channel whose essence of building has been very close to us. Because, you see, when we build academic channels, we run a test prep business. We are not the first ones to discover YouTube as a community channel that can actually aid your business. We actually had a competitor which is 1/3 our scale today. But when we started, it was a mammoth. It had $500 million of cash on the balance sheet. They had raised so much of institutional funds. But what they essentially did was they took all these YouTubers on board, and then they asked them not to teach, but to sell. They asked them to teach just the key topics and then to funnel the students to their paid batch. Our thesis was to go out and altruistically teach the entire syllabus. Don't stop, don't hesitate. In fact, we put the best teachers on YouTube. So sometimes the highest performing teachers are on YouTube. So we teach the entire syllabus. So if there's a DNA disconnect between how you run the YouTube channel and how they ran it for marketing. We run it for academics. We have now millions of videos on our YouTube channels, but you will not find even a single video where the teacher has asked the student to like the video, subscribe the video, or purchase a paid course. Because the moment you do it, you lose the credibility of teaching. So if your DNA is linked, you will be able to assimilate the YouTube channel into your system. The creator must stay, and you must put all the eggs into one basket. That's what we learned from the YouTube channel acquisition. I hope I answered the question.
We have time for one more question. Anybody have one? Well, I've been so inspired by hearing your stories. I want to visit both of you, although I guess I could visit you on YouTube.
You're welcome to come to
and
Colombia, Mexico, Peru.
your schools look so great. I encourage you guys to look at Innova online and see the incredible work that you're doing. Thank you guys so much. This was really fun.
And I want to invite everyone. Like I said, geographical expansion is something that we have always had on the cards. So we want to go beyond India also. If you have opportunities for us, please come and partner. We work as advisors for sure. Although I mentioned we don't want to filter between the interactions, but we work as advisors. We work with advisors. So if people want to visit India, you're most welcome to our offices. We'll welcome everyone. And if you have some stories that we can assimilate for global expansion, we'll be happy to do that.
It's great, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.